We know that in manufacturing, we want to get results. We're making parts. It's all about output. And we know to get there, we got to have people engaged. And one of the latest Gallup reports, we're talking about 21% more profits and 22% more productivity in engaged members of your team. And for that, you need an inspired leader, right? Because who's going to get these people engaged? So, what is the path of an inspired leader? Well, I have my friend and author, Bruce Mayhew, who wrote The Path to the Inspired Leader. Welcome, Bruce.
That's an excellent opening. I love it. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So, Bruce, for over 20 years, you've partnered with organizations and teams. And what really resonated with me when I met you was transforming good intentions into daily behaviors to get results. That is so construction, energy, logistics, manufacturing, our whole circle kind of lives. And I know that you've done specific work in these organizations. So, like on this path to the inspired leader, and your book is out now, which I've been reading, which created me even more questions for you today. But what's driving people to ask for help, and like what are the problems that you're seeing from your end in these fields?
Sure. I would say, from a leadership perspective, from a leader perspective, they're really working in almost a new territory. Leaders are working in new territory nowadays. We realize that millennials are like probably the largest new category of leader, right? So they're no longer the new employee into the company. Millennials
Mm,
are leading organizations now. And boomers have mostly retired. Gen Xers are sitting there in the top C suite because they've been there the longest. But the millennials are now really the leaders that are in the market. And they know that they want to lead differently, but all of their mentors have been people like me who are used to silos and power and what's right and what's wrong. And millennials know that they want a flatter organization. They want a more collaborative environment. They want to have a more friendly environment that they work in. But they're pressed up against this bias, this habit, right, that they've grown up in about silos and different types of leadership powers.
yeah, and we get into that whole of like, what does it matter if you get value from the organization and how they make you feel? Like it's just a job. You're getting a job, and you're doing this, and that doesn't work anymore. And yeah, I can see
No.
that, and I read that in your book a little bit about that conflict between those different generations, and then how do we have to adapt to that? And I think just taking a step back, because what you talked about is that you talked about some reasons on why we think people want to be a leader or what they might say versus
Mhm.
like what's happening now with the millennials. Because I think of like when I ask people like why do they want to be a leader, I'm thinking increased pay, it's kind of what I should be doing now. I've been doing this a while, but you got some better goals of why leaders, why people want to become a leader.
Sure. And all of those traditional reasons still exist around, I want more money. I want to
Yeah,
be more successful.
yeah,
And those are good reasons, right? And there's nothing wrong with having a reason of saying, hey, I want more money. You really want to make sure that as you approach a leadership position, and I would say pretty much everybody's a leader nowadays within their expertise, but
hmm,
taking on responsibility for teams, for multiple people, has to be more than just this is what I should be doing, or that I've been here the longest, so I'm entitled, because
hmm,
that doesn't make a great leader, right? But knowing why you really want to be a leader, it really gives you the power to be an exceptional leader, to be an inspired leader. So really having a sense of, hey, I want to help the company be great, or hey, I want to help my team be the most effective that they can be, or it can go down to the individual. It's like, hey, Bruce is my employee, all right, or Bruce reports up into me. How do
yeah,
I help Bruce be the best Bruce that he can be?
mm,
Right. So those are
hmm,
all three amazing goals, but there should
yeah,
also be a fourth one in my vision of how do I be the most effective that I can be, and also the happiest that I can be.
ooh,
Because being a leader is really stressful and really not a fun place to be if your goal is only to, squeeze as much water out of the towel as possible, right? It's an amazing thing to do when your goal is to put as much water into that towel as possible, if that analogy makes any sense at all. So it really is a perspective of, how do I help everybody, including myself, be fantastic? How do I help everybody be great? Versus how much can I get out of people?
In manufacturing, I find at the plant level, they're very good. If I can find an individual plant or construction site or logistics operation, they're very good on site, like in the building. And then usually, and this is where I struggle sometimes, working to help leaders in Fortune 100 companies, because the people that aren't in the plant are usually looking to wring the towel, to
Mhm.
get the last drops. Like, how do we cut more here? And there's just no conversation about, like, okay, how do we make this the best leadership team? Like, how do we make this like a strong foundation that people just want to work at? And then they're going to follow the standards and we're going to get the profits and the productivity, right? But Bruce, it's like, why? Why are we always just looking at this spreadsheet? Why are we in the boardroom and not on the job site? Right? Like, that's to me the path to inspire leader. So I like to kind of tie this back in to say, like, before you start your day, like, why did you want
Mhm.
to be a leader?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Like, having a good sense of that. But honestly, knowing why you wanna be a leader
Yeah.
is an amazing start to all of this, right?
Mm,
Because it allows you to be authentic when you're standing in front of somebody. And, like,
yeah.
that's, you can be authentic in front of the board members, you can be authentic in front of your boss, you can be authentic in front of your people, you can be authentic in front of your customers, and really believe in what you're trying to accomplish,
Yeah.
right? And honestly, knowing yourself, I believe that self-awareness is sort of the new, or one of the new superpowers of leaders nowadays, is really understanding what my goals are, but also understanding, how do I communicate, right? Where
Yeah.
might I need to learn to communicate a little bit differently, right? And I use differently intentionally, but how do I communicate differently? Because my communication style might change a little bit depending on who my audience is, right? And I think that we all have to recognize, especially leaders, especially if we're in a boardroom or especially if we're on a plant floor, that we need to communicate where the people are that we need to communicate to, right?
Yeah.
So I need to be where they are, as opposed to try to drag them up to my spot, right?
Mhm.
So that's a really important part, especially from a manufacturing perspective, is that if somebody comes across as being all high and mighty and all knowing and all seeing, that's probably not going to go so well.
No.
You really have to respect the people who you're working with, right? Whether they're first day on the job apprentice or whether they've been around for 10 years, it's really important to respect what their needs are and what their perspectives are and what they can add to the equation.
That ties into manufacturing greatness for us, right? Because our core message is, results come from deeper conversations, not telling people what to do. And
Totally.
your research and your experience is just reinforcing that, right? And you're
All
putting,
of that.
and in your book, you've got it really broken down, right, into different areas of, like, okay, so what are the specific, this whole path to the inspired leaders? There's a lot of different aspects to it, right? And I like how you kind of break that down in different areas. But what's in your experience working with these fields? What's a story you can share with our listeners? And how are they approaching some of the tools that you have to solve their
Sure.
problems?
Sure. I think it's interesting to point out, I've worked with pretty much every type of organization. I'm surprised at some of the organizations that I've worked with, right? I've worked with fertility clinics, I've worked with construction organizations, I've worked with justice of the peace. Like,
Wow.
the gamut is wide, right?
Mhm.
And there is very little that I see in the construction world or in the trades world
Yeah.
that is different from a or an investment company or a fertility clinic, for that
Yeah.
matter, right? They're all sort of struggling with many of the same challenges right now, which is, how do I engage people the best way, right? How do I come across as authentic? And how do we work together to be fantastic today and tomorrow? Right? Because it's that component of adjustment. There's a whole world around change and change management. And I will admit that I struggled with the idea of change because
Yeah.
change has all these negative connotations to it. But I love the idea of evolution, right? And to think of ourselves and our workplaces as constantly evolving, right? Because
Hmm.
evolving is all about getting better.
Yeah.
Evolving is whether getting better is being more efficient or knowing more or having more experience, whatever evolution looks like. I love going into organizations and trying to share a concept of evolution because it means that tomorrow's going to be different. And I accept that tomorrow's going to be different, right? And it helps me and it helps the people that I've worked with get out of that thing of, oh, change is hard, change is nasty, change is scary. And we can accept all of those things. We need to accept all of those things. But if we accept them from a perspective of evolution and one of collaboration, where we're all in it together, that works out so beautifully. And I've seen it in manufacturing, I've seen it in the financial district, I've seen it
Yeah.
everywhere. Like that concept really does resonate with people.
I like the word evolve, right? Because it is going to evolve. We can't change that. And we really want
No.
it to evolve because if you look at the industrialization and Henry Ford and just kind of how we just kind of started to where we are today with millennials as leaders, as you said. So,
Mhm.
what's an example in manufacturing of evolving?
I was working last year with an organization just north of Toronto. I was working with this manufacturer. They were sort of tool and die shop kind of, and they were honestly struggling with they came to me from a generational differences perspective. They were like, okay, we need to understand these different generations differently because they were having new apprentices and employees coming onto their floor and into their shop and they were lasting for like 6 months and then they were leaving again. So they were like, okay, what's going on that we don't understand this generation and how do we keep them longer, right? And through discussion and then through training, we started looking at more of a concept of how are we bringing these people into the culture of our organization and what do we want our culture to represent on a daily basis. So what kind of
Mm.
experience do we want our team to have every single day, right? And be really clear on that and being able to define as a group, and I mean like having everybody involved in this definition, being able to define what you want your team culture to look like, your team personality to look like, allows everybody to say, okay, this is our family, right? This is how we
Hmm.
treat each other. This is how we help each other. This is how we have difficult conversations if we need to have a difficult conversation. But we always do it with respect and we always do it with transparency. This is what I can trust. This is what I can count on, right?
So, for our listeners, then, if they're driving into work right now, what's something that that company did that maybe other companies could do to start evolving that culture?
They started asking each other as a group, what do we represent? And what do we want to represent as a team? What are
Hmm.
the things that make us most proud? What do we want to be proud for, right? Or of? So when we're able to start looking at our organizations and include everybody into the conversation saying, what do we want to be? Then it really empowers that sense of community, that culture that everybody can start promising and representing, which means that when I'm hiring a new employee, I can look for those things in that person and make sure that I'm hiring the
Hmm.
right person. And when I'm on their first week, as I'm onboarding them, I can make sure that I'm really clear with this is what being part of our family looks like.
Yeah.
This is
What would
how
be,
we act.
so you talked about the process, but what do we want to represent? So who had that conversation? Was it like leaders with team members? Was it workshops? And then what came out of it? Like, what are some examples that they started to lean into?
Sure. So transparency really became one of the things that really
Mm,
came up to the top on this one.
I like
And
that.
it was sort of a leadership led initiative, but then you let the employees work themselves and talk among themselves and let the employees come up with, this is what I think we should represent, right? So you're actually not you're not sharing down, you're actually
Yeah.
listening up,
I
right?
like it.
So you're really trying to bring your team into the equation and let them build. So really transparency, like they wanted to know what was going on and why was it going on, right? Like what, I need to know why I'm making this thing, right? And so that was an important part. The other important part was, what happens after I've made this thing? Like, where does it go next? Like, how do I
Mhm.
understand that? And so the transparency there was really important. The other is that the team really wanted to define what they were proud of, right?
Yeah.
That they were proud of the quality, right? The reputation of their team, but also the reputation of the company, the
Yeah.
organization, right? So when they went to a dinner party and they said, "Hey, I work for ABC Company," somebody didn't go, "Oh, I heard," right?
Yes.
They wanted like, "No, hey, I work for ABC Company," right?
Yeah.
So they wanted to share why they were proud, but then they wanted to be able to find ways to make that pride even greater, right?
Yeah.
And it really is about building that culture. So in the end, this company didn't really have a generational differences challenge.
Oh.
They had a focus challenge, right?
Yeah.
And they had a culture challenge, a community challenge, where there was, like what I was saying earlier, there was a little bit too much of silo and not enough flat
Mhm.
and not enough openness among the floor. Because when you ask an employee, right, that's on the plant floor or building a wall or jackhammering something, if you ask them, how could you do this better, right?
Mhm.
Is there a tool that you could use? Is there some training that you could use? Have you heard of any new initiative coming down that I haven't heard of, right? Is there a new product that you could use? Asking those people to contribute, that's how you get efficiency nowadays, right? It's
Yeah.
not Henry Ford cracking a whip, right? There's so much going on in our world. It's impossible for leaders to know everything.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
man, if there's somebody that's working a printer, right? Like an industrial printer,
Mhm.
there's a really good chance that they know a lot about printers and what the new printer is doing and like what opportunities there are for efficiencies. Ask them
Yeah.
how to make it better.
Yeah, so that's essentially what they did with their culture, right? Just kind of get the stories from them, and it's we don't have to sit in a boardroom and come
Mm-mm.
up with the culture, right? That's not how it works.
It's the
That's so
worst way.
broken. Yeah,
Yeah.
and now we know better, right? And when you know better,
Mhm.
you do better. And now
Yeah.
you're listening to this podcast, you're listening to Bruce, and so yeah, your book is full of all kinds of different path, steps. I would say steps on the path
Steps.
to the inspired leader, right? Which is it's just I like the whole format. You got some great book recommendations in there, and the one challenge I get talking to people working in manufacturing as I'm coaching is, came up from an HR director. And the question was around like, how do you instill in your organization? We want to ask the team members questions like, hey, you're jackhammering. How can you do this better? And sometimes they don't ask the questions because they have a fear of it being a negative context and that it's going to be more of an interrogation versus, hey, I'm
Mhm.
really asking you. And you talked about this negative versus positive exploration, in your book when you were having these active inquiry situations. Can you say more on that for our listeners?
Sure, sure. And it's a concept that I probably was introduced to maybe about 15 years ago. And it's called appreciative inquiry. And the really quick perspective on that is when you're looking at a challenge, right? I like the word challenge. I don't like the word problem, but when you're looking at a challenge, it's pretty instinctive for us to start looking at that challenge and going, what went wrong? Who's to blame?
Mm-hmm.
And just spend a lot of time looking at the negative part of that challenge. All of those things need to happen. Like we need to know why something didn't go well, right? But what we don't need to do is spend hours and hours or days and days necessarily on that, especially when we're experiencing that challenge in real time.
Mm.
So if a machine broke down, as an example, then we can say, okay, what happened? But really quickly, we need to go switch into what can we do to fix this now, right? So appreciative inquiry quickly moves to what skills do we have right now that can help this? What resources do we have that can fix this? So
Mhm.
it really looks at that appreciative side of our ability, our talent, our resources, anything that is going to help us move forward in a productive manner,
Mhm.
right? And leave that blame, leave the problem behind for a moment and really move into that positive world.
Yeah.
And when we do that, right? So let's say we spend 10 minutes on why did the machine break down, but we spend the next 40 minutes of our meeting looking at what resources we have in order to get this job done, right? Then suddenly everybody gets to collaborate again. Everybody gets to be part of the solution. Everybody gets to feel good about their contribution, what they can do, right? And so at the end of the day, everybody feels fantastic and empowered and like things are moving forward, as opposed to at the end of that meeting or at the end of the day going, oh, I just got whipped,
Yeah.
right? And
Exactly.
it beaten. And at the end of that, you're no closer to a positive solution.
Yeah, I think that's a great explanation because I had some bad experiences with progressive discipline and performance improvement plans, and just, it's just what we had, right? And when
Mm.
all you got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And
Right.
but we just need, like you said, we just need different tools. I think that, yeah, it gives offers just a really good insight, right? Of like and I call it, like, we call it transparent accountability, right? So it's, hey,
Right.
it is a problem, right? It
Yeah.
did happen, Bruce. You were there, so
Hmm.
we're not going to dance around that. But we are
Right.
going to look at is that, what were you thinking when that happened? Like, what was going on? Like, help me
Yep.
understand where you were, so that if I'm in that situation or somebody else is, that we don't end up with the same problem. So we don't
Right.
have to have no, we're not facing the same problem again. Right. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you approach a conversation, if I approach you with and my instinct is blame,
Yeah.
right? If you sense that I'm coming at you with blame, you're going to put up every guard, right?
That's what
And
we
but if
do.
yeah, but if I come at you and say, "Hey," right? Like,
Yeah.
"Trevor,
Yeah.
you know, what happened here and how can we make sure that this doesn't happen again? But we still have this that we need to accomplish today. What are your recommendations on moving this forward?" Like,
Yeah.
right? That 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 brings out the best in Trevor,
Yeah.
not the guard in Trevor, right? And
That's our
that's
job.
what that's what it's all about. And
Yeah.
it really, but and I'm going to take you one step back though, Trevor, is that to have that world of appreciative inquiry, I first have to have an environment where you trust me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where you and I have to have a conversation that says, Trevor, I expect one of these days something bad's going to happen. And it's either going to happen to you or it's going to happen to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or it's going to happen to both of us.
Yeah.
But here's my promise to you is that when this happens, I'm going to take a positive, how can we fix this approach, not a blame you approach. And I
Mm-hmm.
would like you to do the same to me. I
Yeah.
want to have a conversation with you that says, this is what you can trust in me. So that when it does break, I'm not scrambling to hide it underneath the carpet. When it breaks, I can go, hey, Trevor, we have a problem here. And I know that we're going to take this appreciative inquiry route.
What I'm hearing is that you set the foundation, right? And then we build trust by our behaviors. And you tie it back to the beginning, right? To help people that tend to have a good behavior actually have a good behavior. And you do that by setting up the framework ahead of time, right? And
Yep.
then we got to resist from you because our brains may go to blame, but we got to filter that out into curiosity. And we talked just about, just be curious. Just be curious about the
Yep.
problem, support that person. And then how do you inspire? Go back to that beginning. And so much in that. And that's going to be, all in the book. So how do we do this? How do we follow you? I got your book ordered. That was the bookmark that you gave me when we met. But now it's out for release. We're going to put the link in the show notes. How else do
Great.
people get more of Bruce?
Yeah, the book's a great spot. Go to my website, which is just brucemayhew.com, Mayhew. You can follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I'm always throwing free information up there. On my website, there's a leadership blog. I'm writing stories to myself all the time and publishing them, whether it's on time management or email etiquette or leadership or difficult conversations, whatever it might be. If I have an idea in my head, I usually sketch it out and put it up on the website so that people can just read what's in my head.
That's awesome.
So yeah, there's all kinds of different ways you can get a little piece of Bruce.
Right on. Well, hey, any leader that's listening here, like if you're looking to that path, and you don't have to. One thing I liked about your book too is that you don't have to read the whole book. You got a real great table of contents. I can jump into somewhere, like I can skip steps. If I,
You
hey, this is
can.
this is a problem I'm facing right now, I'll jump to this. And yeah, just thanks for writing it, Bruce, and great job, and thanks for contributing to the industry. And we need to do this, as you said, with the generational changes. So yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show. Congratulations on the book, and
Thank you.
appreciate you, Bruce.
This has been my absolute pleasure. It's great to be here with you, Trevor.